Principle number 4, I'll say it again. Men and women are to respect godly authority and to conduct themselves in public in a way that honors their spouse and honors their marriage covenant. This is where it gets a little hairy, so hang on, here we go. Verse 4, every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. Now, head is used 14 times in this text. Did you pick that up yet? If you circle it, it stands out a lot. You got a lot of circles in your head. A lot of circles in your head. Oh, there's a circle right here. You got a lot of circles in your page. And Paul's interchanging the expression of head to give an example of authority. So he's using head in one sense as the literal thing right here on top of my body, but that is symbolizing and representing something greater, namely authority. So he's using the word head, and this is the verse that gets torn to shreds, is what does kephale mean? Thousands of pages written on what that word means, how it's defined, and I'll save you all the boring work. I'll give you the cliff notes. Head means head, authority. You walk in the store, hey, I want to see the head honcho. What do you mean? You want to see the guy or the gal in charge. That's what you mean. That's what Paul's meaning here. So he's saying here, verse 4, every man who prays or prophesies with his physical head covered dishonors his spiritual head of authority over him. Now, what in the world is Paul saying there? Here's what Paul's saying. Verse 4, it was widely known in this time that Roman men practiced the custom of covering their heads to pray as an act of piety when worshiping pagan gods. Paul is saying that Christian men should not dishonor Christ by praying according to pagan customs. Okay? So now we're taking a spiritual principle and he's overlaying it into cultural methods. So he's saying the principle is to act in such a way that honors Christ as ultimate authority, and if you were to pray and worship in this way, it would appear to the culture that you're honoring and giving praise to pagan gods that are worshiped this way. So take the principle of honoring Christ, overlay it to the cultural specific method. Don't pray in this way, not because it's illegal or against God's law to have your head covered, but if it communicates culturally that a confusing message with who you worship, you shouldn't do it. Make sense? It made sense to two people. I better keep going here. Whew, I thought that was pretty good. Bummer. Let's read verse 5. But every wife who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. See the difference? See what he's saying here? Every woman who prays or prophesies with her physical head uncovered dishonors her spiritual authority head over her. It is the same as if her head were shaven. For if a wife will not cover her head, then she should cut her hair short. But since it is disgraceful for a wife to cut off her hair or shave her head, let her cover her head. Now, what does that mean again here? What's Paul saying? A married woman, this is where the cultural insight will help us out a little bit here. A married woman who uncovered her head in public would have brought shame to her husband. Why? Because they were oppressive to women in that day? No. Because there were two kinds of women who uncovered their head in that time culturally. Ones who were sexually loose and those who were pursuing alternative sexual lifestyles. That's why. So in that time, you can see how much we've progressed in culture, right? At that time, if a woman wanted to go butch and wanted to go the lesbian route, she'd shave her hair and strap down her breasts and wear clothes that were kind of macho and masculine and thuggish, and she'd parade around dressing as a man. See how far we've advanced in culture, right? Nothing's new under the sun. We've been driving on the same cultural cul-de-sac for 2,000 years, still haven't figured it out yet. Conversely, women who wanted to communicate they were available would uncover their hair and let it down. Those women who were married signaled culturally to those around them they were married, they were unavailable sexually by covering their hair. Now, what does that mean for us? If a woman failed to wear a head covering and wore her hair like a man or like a floozy, she brought disgrace on herself and her husband because her behavior was a symbol of her rebellion against the created order, i.e. the intended relationships between man and women. Her failure to wear a head covering would have communicated rebellion and independence, to everyone present in worship. A woman was not to act then or dress in such a way that would culturally bring disgrace on herself or her husband. Now, let's take the timely principle here, extract it from some of the maybe culturally specific and confusing things, and apply here. Is Paul ultimately really concerned and carrying a huge weight of burden for women's hairdos? If he was, I wouldn't be following him, okay? Because if a dude cares that much about hair product and curling irons, I'm just not into him, okay? I'm not going to follow him very far. Paul's overwhelming burden here is not that women style their hair a certain way, but rather that women publicly communicate things that are in line with who they are in Christ. Now, what this means is Christians live in culture. Christians cannot extract themselves from the cultural norms we live in. So, for instance, there are certain words that I would never say from this pulpit because they are 4-letter words. What makes those words bad? I don't know. I'll tell you what makes them bad. Our culture. Our culture makes them bad. Our culture rates things like, youth, mature, adult. Our culture recognizes these words as offensive, as harsh, as bad. So I don't use them publicly. Does that make sense? We live in culture, Christians, and it is okay for culture to determine some things that are norms. So, for instance, this is not a great example, but it's for instance, I've been wearing my hat backwards the entire time I've been preaching. Haven't I, Pastor Kent? Mom, what did you feel when I walked out on the stage?
I was thinking the same thing. What was your mom thinking?
That's what you were thinking? I want to know, Mom, what you felt right here in your chest when your son walked out on stage with his hat backwards. Wearing my hat this way communicates something, doesn't it? What does it communicate? Well, you guys like totally disconnect from culture or what? Irresponsibility, maybe? Rebellion? Disrespect? Good. Disrespect for authority? Excellent. Now, how many of you have seen a president give a State of the Union address with his hat on backwards? Welcome, all glad to be here. I'd like to give you the State of the Union address. Who could take the guy seriously, right? True story. When I got my license in high school, Dad said, son, I got a few rules for you. When you drive my truck, when you drive my truck, you do not wear your hat backwards. Oh, Dad, why not? It'd be so... He said, you do not wear your hat backwards. When you drive my truck, you wear your hat forward with no hat at all. Now, was that a stupid, legalistic religiosity move by my dad? No, it wasn't. Why was it not? Here's what my dad told me. He said, son, I'm not interested in you communicating to those that see you driving or the officers that pull you over that you are flippant or disrespectful or indifferent to authority. That you are an irresponsible idiot who should not be given the responsibility of driving a 2-ton vehicle that could kill small children were they to run in your path. I want you to communicate with how you dress that you are responsible and respectful. Therefore, you will not wear your hat backwards when you drive. Now, we could say, well, that's so legalistic. Or we could say, no, that's probably a father being wise with the cultural mores we live in today because, question, was Dad really interested in my hat or my heart? He's interested in my heart. And what goes on my head oftentimes reveals what's in my heart.